You are watching Community Showcase on ITV, and in today's show we are discussing the Oasis Group Holdings, or Oasis, winning a very special award for global compliance, Shari'ah compliance, for their Oasis Crescent Global Equity Fund, which has outperformed all of its rivals in the marketplace. Our guest in studio is Oasis CEO Ebrahim. Adam, assalamu alaikum and welcome.
Wa alaikum salam, Shafiq. Thank you for inviting me.
Now, 17 years, 8 awards. Tell us, where's the magic?
It's a kind of magic, isn't it? Alhamdulillah, it's been fantastic. Starting Oasis has allowed us to exercise our intellect and our entrepreneurship and the flair for investments. And our investment philosophy, which focuses on building long-term portfolios, one, that preserves the wealth of our clients, and two, grows the wealth of our clients. Now, that doesn't happen every day, but it happens over a period of time. And alhamdulillah, this fund epitomizes this, because this award is about long-term performance, long-term sustainability. And so we kind of have two broad themes. Those long-term companies that are fantastic, great companies over 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and we tend to buy market leadership, and we tend to buy cheaply. And then there's a second broad theme. We identify newer companies or newer industries that are right at the beginning of the development. And, you know, I'll just mention two of them. For example, one is the aging population. You now have more people getting older, being over 65, as people live longer, and that means you need more healthcare, you need more hospitals, you need more old age homes, and we've positioned ourselves for that. In a more modern sense, with the explosion of data, with social media and fast internet, the amount of data that is transmitted around the world, so we've got a big exposure to the telco sector, and secondly, a very, very big exposure to the data center sector. So that is the future, and we got in very early. So there's two types of themes: the long term that has been around global market leaders and pour out cash flow, and those sectors that are early in. So it's a great combination of mature and immature with future growth, and together that creates a platform for sustainability. All of that is pretty well diversified globally, diversified so geographically, by currency, by sector, by instrument, by asset class. So the fund has really, really delivered on that. And remember, from a South African point of view, South African economy is growing at 0 to 1%, which is actually, it's not growing at all, unfortunately, and it's been doing that for a number of years. In that environment, it's very difficult for our companies to grow. It's difficult for them to make money, and it's very difficult for the share prices to perform. So two things have happened. One, we are able to invest globally, and the global economy is growing at 3.5%, so a lot faster than South Africa. And within that, you can pick pockets of faster growth and sustainability. And so the Global Fund gives us that opportunity as South Africans to get exposure to that in a fund that's got a sound track record, well regulated, and we take out the noise and we focus on what really makes and grows wealth over the long term.
Now, if you look at the figures, they're quite staggering. 2008 to 2010, you plow through the waves. Then after that, the graph looks like a mountain. And the returns, the average returns on this fund appear to be well above the average in the marketplace. Tell us something about that, I mean, that performance curve.
So you're talking about waves. Now, Shafiq is a great surfer, so he's kind of giving us some surfing terms. So we don't hit the waves because, unfortunately, my swimming skills are not as good as yours.
But you managed to plow through them.
Yes. As I explained about the philosophy is those two themes, and then we're very diligent on going to make sure we do our due diligence in an appropriate way, which ensures that our error rate is very low. We take out all the noise, we take out all the short-term pressure. So today, when you're looking at the tech sector, for example, the online e-commerce sector, they represent almost a mirror image of the TMT, tech, telecommunication and media sector of the 1990s. And the story of those sectors of the 1990s, early 2000, they dropped 80 to 90%. Many of them have never recovered, many of them have disappeared. So what we never invested in those companies then. A lot of those companies are now great companies. We bought them very cheaply after the decline. You understand? And we think that everybody's plowing in, like they plowed in to the TMT sector in the late 90s. They're plowing into e-commerce and social media, paying 150 times current year earnings. So it takes 150 years to pay back. Now we're buying great companies with 5 and 6 and 7 year paybacks. Now I know over the very long term, with strong cash flows, that's going to be a winner. And you know what? When those social media companies come down 80, 90%, we'll be there waiting, making sure we pick them up so they don't crash.
What is interesting about this is your investment pick, if I'm getting the right terminology. Technology, health, communications are right at the top of your choices. In a sense, it seems as if you've been futuristic in terms of how you've invested and managed to project yourself into the future.
Yes, so we've done that again in two ways. The traditional market leaders in technology, if you think about Microsoft, it's been around, it's been a market leader for a very long time, and it's reinvented itself. You know, so today people use mobile and cloud, etc., rather than the traditional. It still dominates the traditional space, but it's very aggressive and very good at delivering into the new. So they're able to innovate. So that's great. So we follow those. And one of the things, we like companies where the management and the people work for those companies through their entire careers. So the promotion of people is from within. So you don't have an outsider coming in with a different business philosophy, different, and wants to change everything.
So human capital is as important as anything else when you look at stock.
Of course, because that, you know, if you just look at the new CEO he's got software in his blood, in his DNA, and he's out-competing anybody, and yet, you know, so you've brought this new, fresh air, you know, of innovation, but you kept the tradition and the DNA of the organization, and that has to be a winner. And so those traditional companies are fantastic to have in your portfolio, because you know what, they generate $20 billion of free cash flow. That's a huge amount of money. Now we've got quite a number of those type of companies in our portfolio. And then we've got something like Digital Realty, which now is the dominant player in the data center space. Now you, every time you tweet something, now you know there's the big tweeter in the world, so tweeting's happening like crazy. People are taking photographs, and it's no longer stored on your, you know, box at home of 10 years ago or 20 years ago. It's now stored in space, in the cloud. And that cloud, it's not actually stored in space, it just goes on your Apple device or your Android device, and it goes into a data center owned by some of those companies, but very often owned by a company like Digital Realty. Now the interesting thing about Digital Realty, they're a global player. Their competitive advantage is it's so difficult to replicate. So if anybody wants to have a global footprint, you go to Digital Realty, and the barriers to entry, so what we like are industries where it's difficult to get in, right? So the competition can't get in. So you almost have a pricing ability, okay? And we also like industries where it's easy to get out. So when the weak needs to get out, we need to kick them out quickly.
Right.
You understand? And that's the dynamism of really making superior returns. Now imagine you made good profits, but it was easy to get in. If the supply would increase and the prices would come down, wouldn't they? and the profits would come down. So by selecting those industries like the data centers, where the barriers to entry, Microsoft or Facebook or Alibaba or any of these companies want, if they're going to outsource, they do a lot of it in-house, but if they're going to outsource the data centers, they want to make sure that they're the best. Now, just think about it. Think of just over the horizon. Today we're talking about electric cars. We're just at the infancy of electric cars. We're also talking about more information. So you can ask for directions, you can put your navigation. That all needs data and communication. Now imagine you go one step further and you have the autonomous driving car. The amount of data that is absorbed, just that one car, and we position for that. So we have a base of tradition, a layer of innovation. So the tradition also has innovation, that together really produces the fantastic returns that we've put together over 20 years.
You went to Kazakhstan, where you picked up this global award. What were your impressions of Kazakhstan, a rising country in the Eastern Bloc, isn't it?
Yes, it is. As you know, I like history. So this is the period of the Mughals, the Mongols, Genghis Khan, but importantly, from our perspective, Timur. And out of Timur's descendants come the Mughals, who ruled this area in India for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Right.
And this country, they were nomadic people, and these people have settled from being nomads just 100 years ago. And what they've managed to achieve has been fantastic. So the old capital used to be Almaty, so that's the cultural center of Kazakhstan. Astana is a new city. I asked them to take us to the old part of the city, and they took us to some place that was 15 years old. That was the old part of the city. And it was, but it's brand new. Now, you'd expect if you build something brand new, it's well set out, well designed, very functional, very clean. I must say, very organized. And so you almost get a quantum leap from being able to put in exactly what you want with with high-speed internet, etc. So it's a fantastic environment, very safe. What's also, if you look at Kazakhstan as a country, and I'll talk about it a bit later, it's surrounded almost by every major growing power today. So it's surrounded by China. It's got a border of about 1,500 kilometers with China. On the north, it's got a border with Russia of about 6,000 kilometers. In the south, with Pakistan and Afghanistan. In the west, the Caspian Sea. So that's Turkey and all the countries around the Caspian Sea. So it's pretty well connected.
Geographically, they're spot on.
Yes, but given all the developments, you're now starting to see the linkages. Now, traditionally, these economies were single or commodity-based, oil-based, and they're gold-based. But what you're going to see in many of these countries is a fast, rapid diversification away from single commodities, which will mean greater sustainability, greater growth, and greater interconnectivity. At the time when the Anglo-Saxon world is saying, we don't want to trade, we don't want the people of the world, and we don't want to be interconnected with the world, the rest of the world are actually doing exactly the opposite and putting all the linkages through trade, through expos, through intergovernmental meetings. So when I was in Astana, so it was the week of the last week of the expo. The expo is 3 months, the global expo. Secondly, we had the awards that evening. My deputy chairperson Nazim, my brother, and I went to the awards. And thirdly, they also had the OIC meeting. So we had presidents staying in the same hotel with lots of security.
I heard that President Erdogan was your neighbor.
Yes, he stayed in the, I didn't see him obviously, but there was lots of security. But that just tells you, there were exhibitions by delegations from the EU and all different types of countries. We don't see that vibrancy in our country, and yet that is in the middle of nowhere. Imagine building the city in the middle of the Karoo.
Indeed.
You know, and giving yourselves a competitive advantage. If you look at just down Cape Town, we're doing better than the rest of the country, but we're not doing as well because the whole country is poorly managed. We're not doing as well as we should do.
Now, you went to this expo, and one thing that you've mentioned off camera is that very forward-looking technology is moving in some exciting directions. I'm sure you must have got lots of ideas.
Yes, it was really interesting because I was there, so I went to the expo on a number of occasions. Unfortunately, my home country didn't do justice to itself. It had a very small expo selling trinkets. And most of Africa did the same.
Which you can buy in China anyway.
Yes. What we should have been doing is we should have been promoting South Africa as a tourist destination. Now think about it. This is the place in the world, this area, this connected area with the fastest economic growth, with the greatest wealth creation, with the greatest number of people being able to say, have money, willing to travel, and desperate to travel because they've never been there before. So we should have been promoting tourism, and they just stream, into our country. And yet, again, a situation where we could have created tens of thousands of jobs by having a good expo. We created nothing. So the expo was focused on sustainable energy, and so it was fantastic to see all the developments from the power stations to the home to the motor vehicle. And I can say there has been tremendous change. We see some of it in South Africa, but it's really, really exciting of what will happen to the home, to electricity, and to the motor vehicle over the next 5-10 years.
In terms of investment, you're talking about real, true growth industries.
Yes, but it's going to make some industries obsolete and some companies obsolete. And if we don't watch it, many of the companies that we have in South Africa could become obsolete if we don't. So for example, if you look at the massive transformation that has happened in Germany and Japan just in the last 10 years with regard to energy, electricity. This happened after the tsunami hit the power station in Japan and it melted down, and the Japanese and the Germans independently made a decision that they are going to change the energy mix, less nuclear, and they didn't want to go with coal, so they had to come up with innovation. So solar, wind, and everything around renewable energy. And what's amazing is today in Germany, many households produce more electricity than they can consume in the house, then they can use to charge their car, and they put it back into the grid. So can you imagine, we used to be invested in two German counterparts to Eskom, RWE and E.ON. The day the tsunami hit, we sold those, just thank God we did. Those companies are down 70% since then, because they now have got every household as a competitor. So now imagine that happens in South Africa. Your cost of electricity will come down, and yet in the same 10 years we haven't been able to sign the IPP renewable agreements. These countries have created whole industries and they've got market leadership. And then so that takes you to the house, to the car. The car's going to be completely innovated. And
you actually mentioned a tire with a battery inside it.
Yes.
That's how far it's gone.
Yes, so the big issue about renewable energy, whether it's wind or wave or solar, is storage, because the sun doesn't shine all the time, wind doesn't blow all the time, and the waves, I think there's times when you can't surf because it's just completely flat. So storage is a big issue. And that's been the impediment to growing. So you have to use it now, put it into the grid. But the biggest developments have been in storage. And again, one of the biggest innovators in storage has been a South African who lives in America, Elon Musk. So over the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to see massive developments of storage. That means you'll be able to power your house 24 hours a day using solar. So why do you need to be on the grid? So you could find many households go off the grid, Now, if you think about that, many municipalities make a lot of their revenue by taking the Eskom tariff and adding on to that and charging you and I as the residential rate. It means that not only does the electricity company not have a customer, the governments are not able to collect taxes on the household.
Yes.
If you think about the fuel levy, about 1/3 of the petrol, maybe even 40% of the petrol price is fuel levy. Okay? If you go to electric cars, there's no fuel levy. You've got to find another way. It actually changes the way governments are funded.
It does. Yes.
It's dramatic. So that's the expo. Was quite very, very interesting. I'm glad I went. And you pick up. There's so many different elements that you take away. It's not only the industrial, but what happens to the finances, what happens to governments, because these are transformational. And when you have transformation, and remember, governments tend to be reactive globally
rather than proactive.
Yes. So you're going to find that what could happen is, and is happening, is government revenue comes down because of that. And unfortunately, you and I earning an income or owning a property, they increase your taxes because they need to. So in a strange way, because governments are reactive, the ordinary consumer loses a lot of the benefits of innovation through taxes.
And in our last minute, Adam, you mentioned the Silk Route. Let's make the connection.
Yes, so I've explained to you, Kazakhstan's a big country, right in the heart of the connector between Asia and Europe. Okay, between China, Russia, and Europe, but also the southern part of Asia, and that is the Indo-Pac, subcontinent. Now, 15 years ago, Nazim and I went to the up the Karakoram Highway, and it's amazing. And that's why the real reason why there's wars in Afghanistan and Pakistan is because if you have peace in that area, you can really develop those areas. You can increase the economic growth, increase the connectivity, and you'll change the power play in the world. And so what's very interesting, when we went there, we went up the Karakoram Highway, which kind of links Karachi to the Chinese and the Russians, okay? Because Karachi is the closest port to central Russia, the closest port to the republics like Kazakhstan, and it's the central port to Western China. Now, what has happened is there's a fantastic, the Chinese have been promoting, very interesting, promoting the Silk Route for their own benefit, for trade, and that Karakoram Highway now will link not only China, but it will take you right all the way through. So it will link southern Asia to northern Asia with road, rail, and pipeline. And it's nearly all done. And so you've got the north-south, and what's happening is, if you have to, China has to import or export, so import its oil or export its washing machines. It's got to go to the ports around the Cape. Now it's some very interesting, we could be marginalized out of the equation. Okay? We marginalize when they rounded the Cape and Cape Town or something, and the Suez Canal happened. We marginalized the Silk Route, and the Silk Route stopped, and it destroyed the tax base of all the countries. And you remember, those countries were the power base of the world. When the trade disappeared, the tax base and the power base disappeared. So now they're re-establishing that. And so you'll be able to ship product from China all the way through to Europe, road, rail, pipeline, and Russia, north, south, east, west. But east, west could save 2 weeks to 3 weeks on the boat. And so so I'll be careful investing in ships.
Massive savings, yeah.
Be careful, Cape Town may miss out. So these are some of the kind of developments that are happening geopolitically. And structurally, these are natural things where people want to trade with each other, make life easier. So these economies are just going to, they're just going to grow, and we need to be connected to them. We're not really very well connected to them. We have what they don't have. We have beauty. We have the most wonderful nature. So we've got to position ourselves to be as a destination, a tourist destination. Let's just stop there. Just tourism, should be able to take away all the negativity of rounding the Cape with the high quality tourist jobs. Some of the energy that will be used is fuel cells. And that will, or if you use the electric car, the platinum industry is dead. Yeah. So tens and tens and tens of thousands of South African workers will lose their job. So these are kind of very dramatic changes that are likely to happen. I don't see any of our people talking about it. So by visiting, it gives you insights. It allows you to exercise your intellect. And it allows me to apply my skills as an investment professional by building the beautiful portfolios that we have in the Oasis Crescent Global Equity Fund that won the award in Astana. To round it off, all of this kind of, so visiting there, getting the award, seeing all of this, they all reinforce each other because it helps you formulate your strategy for the future.
Adam Ebrahim, CEO of Oasis, congratulations on your Global Equity Fund winning its 8th award in 17 years. May you go from strength to strength.
Thank you so much. It's been fun sitting here today. And we thank the Almighty for giving us this opportunity. And inshallah, I hope we can produce what we produced in the last 20 years for the next 20 years.
Amen to that. And you've been watching a community showcase on ITV. From myself, Shafiq Morton, until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.